So anyway,
Oh yeah.
so who's going to be on this call? Coaches, players?
Coaches. There's attendees that
How many you
will
got?
watch. It's 100 plus, and then there's
No shit.
we're also live on YouTube. So
Any of my old nemesis? Any of my old PBA coaches? Chat Reyes or
Jong Chico. Coach
Jung
Jong.
is on? Good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. I think he's the president of our coaches commission. There's a coaches
What was
commission.
my guy's name who used to kick my ass from Red Bull? He was a really good coach. Yang Yao. What about
Yang Yao. I don't know if he's gonna make it, but the other head coaches
What
will
about
be.
Norman Black?
I don't know if he's gonna be here, but
Is he still coaching down there?
yes, he's still coaching. So Teddy here is also on, one of our panelists. Is a sports psychologist. He handles team building sessions. So he'll be
Did
one
Benito
of the
tell you I ran into him when I was coaching the Dominican Republic team at the World Championships?
For sure,
Back
he's gonna
in,
talk about it. Oh, Kinito is with us now.
Yeah.
So
Kenito
I'm
and I
gonna.
ran into each other in Spain. And Mukesh was there in Spain as well.
Uh huh. So yeah,
We
Kinito's
played the
here.
Philippines. We almost had a fight.
I know. I heard about
We
it.
scrimmaged the Philippines. Yeah, there was almost a fight.
Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna open the the broadcast now. So
Okay.
again, we're just gonna introduce the dean and doc, and then you. Then I'll introduce you, and then Coach
Okay.
Kinito will be the one to facilitate the question and answer, and then we'll go from there. All right.
Okay. Yep.
All right. We're just waiting on the attendees to enter. No, they're
Okay.
entering now. All right. So we're with Coach Bill Bayno now. Coach Bill Bayno was in the Philippines for 1 year. I was his assistant coach in 2001. And we've stayed in touch. And his journey from PBA to NBA, and he's now a long time assistant coach in the NBA, and he's now with the Indiana Spurs. Again with us, Indiana Pacers. Sorry. So again with us are the dean and the doc, as you're probably familiar. Teddy is a sports psychologist. He's got a clinic at the Makati Med. Teddy, say hello.
Hi everyone. Good evening.
And then of course, the dean Kinito Henson. So he's here with us, and Dean, can you say some hello?
Greeting to everyone. Thanks, Coach Ariel, and thank you to Blackwater. Thank you for the Hoops Coaches International. Thanks to Doc Eddie, and of course, I've been looking forward to this, a reunion with Coach Bill Bayno himself.
Kinito,
right.
You remember the last time we saw each other?
That's right, at the Raptors dressing room.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, but I thought we saw each other when I coached the Dominican team and we were in Spain together. You were in Spain covering that, weren't
Right?
you?
Yeah. I was in Spain, but I think I caught you after that.
Okay.
It might have been, I think maybe about a year later. It was a Toronto game at Miami.
Okay. Yes.
I had an interview scheduled with Spo. And then I didn't realize that it was you at Toronto. So I went over to say hi to you. And you had me go inside the Toronto Raptors dressing room. You introduced me to the players. And after we were done, it took about 30 minutes. I went out to look for Spo. He left. He couldn't wait for me. He was gone. And I said, that's okay. Just to be with Coach Bill again.
Head coach stress. We probably won the game then. He probably was running home to watch the tape.
Yeah, probably did.
He's a great guy. Spo's one of the all-time great guys in the business. Really, really good person.
Well, you're one of the all-time greats yourself, Bill.
Well, thank you, Kinito. I appreciate it. I missed my time in the Philippines. I had good memories there. Really good memories.
You know, this is going to be a nice opportunity to just refresh our memories about you. Just looking at your NBA career, You started off with Portland Trail Blazers,
Yes.
and you went off to Minnesota, Toronto, and then Indiana. But you're almost like bookended by your head coach, Nate McMillan. He was your head coach when you were assistant coach at Portland. Now you're back with McMillan. What is it with McMillan?
Well, anytime you work for someone, just like Ariel and I, you develop a bond and you're both in the trenches every day. And I can remember, back in the PBA days of, Ariel doing a great job for me, doing game plans. I can remember, the battles we had with Tim Cohn and how to defend the triangle. And Ariel would put together the scout team and they would run the triangle and do all the different options. And we would have our guys guard it. And so you're doing work together. You're, experiencing the highs and lows of coaching together, which are extreme. And, Nate and I have always had a good relationship. And when he had an opening, it just happened to coincide with the year I took off to have hip surgery. And he offered me the job and I jumped on it. And Kevin Pritchard is also our president, and he was Larry Bird's GM at the time. So, Kevin is one of my closest friends in the world. So between Kevin and Nate, it was just a really good fit, and I was happy to be back there. And it's a great organization. We don't have a lot of money, but, with Bird and Kevin Pritchard and Nate's coaching and the other coaches we have on staff, we've always managed to exceed expectations with not a lot of money. And it's just a great opportunity. We have a great culture. KP has brought in great players. Nate's a great coach, and everything has really been fun.
Do you regret leaving Toronto before they made it to the NBA championship?
No, I didn't see that coming. And, there was just a situation where I had a chance to take a year off, and I had to get hip surgery, and it had been bothering me. And so looking back on it, I probably shouldn't have left. But, I had to take care of my health. I wouldn't have been able to coach that year anyway. And I kept delaying it to where I was literally just dragging my left hip around. It was so bad. And anybody else that has bad hips, get the surgery, because now I can actually, I run sprints out on the beach now with my old butt. But the hip replacement is truly a magical. It's unbelievable. Once I got through the rehab, I went from basically being a cripple to, feeling like I was 40 years old again. So I recommend it to anybody. If you got a bad hip, get the hip surgery.
Well, Bill, tell us about the NBA game now and how the game has changed.
So here's my thing. Everybody, because it's a big talking point, they want to talk about how much it's changed. And it has changed. But to me, I don't think it's changed as much other than the three-point shot. But think about the Detroit Pistons back when they won the championship. Their center was Bill Laimbeer. What was his number one skill? Maybe his second best skill set. He shot three-point shots, and he was the center. And even going back, everyone says, oh, the game is so much faster now. And there were certain eras like the Jordan Bulls teams, they didn't really play up and down fast. But if you go back to Magic and Bird and Dr. J, those guys were scoring 140 points a game in the finals, running out of the net on makes. They were getting the ball out quick, which was something that we did with talking text. That was a big part of our offense. We tried to score on you on makes, and in a 40-minute game, we tried to score 90 points a game, which is a lot in 40 minutes. That was our goal. And so it has changed a little bit in that it's more positionless now. You have a lot of guys that really could be a 1, a 2, a 3. Like, what is LeBron? To me, LeBron's a point guard. Dwayne Wade, even though he's a scoring guard, that ball's in his hands. He's making plays. Draymond Green, what is he? You know, he's like a hybrid. He's a point forward. So I think you have more of that. But in terms of, you know, the NBA speeding up, yes, a little bit, but there were, you know, as I mentioned, all those teams that played even faster than we're playing now. And you still did have a lot of what I call spread fours, you know, maybe not as many spread fives, but big guys that could shoot from the perimeter. So I think it's mostly the fact that you have a lot of guys that you can just move around like a chess piece. They can play any position. They're like the queen on a chessboard. So I think that's been the biggest change. And you know, and it's all, I think, been predicated off the 3-point line. I think analytics has really played a big role. And I don't think you can just use analytics to win. I think analytics to me is an important tool, but it's really just to either confirm or deny what your eyes see on the tape. So, but just the fact that teams now offensively are emphasizing, I think you guys lost me, but teams are really emphasizing either get to the rim because it's a high percentage shot, or kick it out for a three, especially a corner three. So teams are trying to get more rim attempts, more corner threes, and obviously more free throws. I've always been a big free throw guy. My teams have always, you know, had taken a lot of free throws because I was just always about attack, and use your body while you were doing it. So, but I think the league's in a really good place. It's, you know, hopefully we get through this virus and we can get started here. You guys there?
Yes. There's a question, Coach, from Ray Hoble. You were coaching in the Philippines for 2 conferences and went to the finals. What was your observation of Filipino coaches? Can we consider to be at par or of some of the coaches today?
I know a lot of them kicked my ass. I can tell you that. No, I had a ton of respect for the Philippine coaches. As Ariel, as you know, we talked about, you know, Yang Yao kicking my butt, and Chot Reyes had my number. We always had a tough time. I think we might have beat Chot once in the 2 seasons I was there. But no, it was fun, and it was a challenge. You know how hard we had to prepare to win games, all the film we watched, the practices. You know, it was we had a lot of success, but you know, it was a challenge. There were a lot of good coaches, Tim Cohn and you know, Norman Black, Yang Yao, as I mentioned, Chot Reyes, you know, little Ryan. It's been a long time. What was Ryan's last name?
Gorio.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, it was a battle. They're competitive. And you know, even the players, I always talked about how competitive they were. I remember coaching the Dominican team, and we actually had a fight in the game in the FIBA World Championships in a friendly game, because both teams, the Dominicans are very similar. They're tough, aggressive. They're not afraid of anyone. And we had a little dust up there. Thank God you weren't coaching, Ariel. I was going to come down there and fight you.
Hey, somebody wants to say hi. Your former player, point guard, Don Belano, your favorite.
Oh, my guy. Hey, I'm great. Great to see you and talk to you.
Don Bell is coaching now in Cebu.
How come I can't see? I want to see him. How do I do that?
Wait.
Slide? Okay.
No. I have
more?
to wait.
There, I got Bolano on.
There you go.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm like everybody else. I'm inside my house. It's Groundhog Day here. Every day we wake up, it's the same thing.
Yeah. I'm happy to see you again.
Yes, good to see you.
I'm coaching right now in Cebu.
That's awesome.
He's coaching now. We did a clinic also. He invited me to go over to one of the provinces, and we had a good time.
Yeah, you know, I really miss Filipino basketball. I'm in touch with MVP and, Mark Dickel, who ended up taking the talking text job. And I had talked to MVP and Ricky Vargas to really try to promote him and get them to hire him. And I'm glad he had success. But I miss my days down there. They were a lot of fun and really competitive. There was nothing like going to the big arena there with 20,000 fans. Like, I did not expect that when I came over there. And, the thing I love maybe most about the PBA were how engaged the fans were. Like, when I would go to Starbucks or walk down the street, people would honk their horns, and everybody called me Coach BAYNO with the Filipino accent. But
Nah.
I really, and I've been
I'm
trying to get back down there. I've talked to Ariel, I've talked to MVP about coming down and doing a camp or clinics or doing a little consulting for a couple weeks. But my big part of my NBA job is player development in the summer. So, like, for the last 3 summers, I've been with Sabonis most of the summer. So I just don't have that much time. And then we have summer league, but I really want to get back down and, do an on-court clinic and, maybe come back out and help out MVP and help out Mark, with talking text. But it's great to see you, Don. Great to see you. You're looking good. You're looking young.
So,
Those Filipino genes. I always said the
Uh-huh.
Filipinos have the best genes. They stay young. And when they're 50, they look 30.
So yeah, follow up on Sabonis. So he elevated his game from a starter to like a all-star caliber. What facets of his game does he worked on to make that leap?
Well, I think the biggest thing, he was always a really good playmaker for a big guy. He could handle the ball. Our terminology in the NBA is DHO, is dribble handoff, where he would dribble at guards who could either go back door or could come off. But he could always pass. We really worked on his right hand, and we worked on him being more aggressive and using his body. I call them shoulder hits. So I have these big arm pads that I use, and we did it in the post. We did it on face-ups. We did it on what we call in the NBA is a short roll, where when you set the pick and roll, instead of rolling all the way to the rim, you stop short because the bigs are like trapping or corralling. And we would throw the little pocket pass to him, and then he would attack. And we mostly work on him going right because he was a left-hander, but we, work on him just attacking because he's not a great athlete. So when he's going up against the DeAndre Jordans or the bigger Andre Drummonds, he has to learn how to use his body, and he really got better at it. And he's one of the leading passers in the NBA for a big man, but he also is one of the leading free throw attempt guys. And so the right hands, the shot fakes, but really just being aggressive, attacking, and trying to get to the free throw line.
I want to ask a question, Coach Bill, about your transition from the PBA to the NBA, and how difficult was that, or how easy was it?
It was a little difficult only because I had never been to the NBA. So, anytime you go into, like, I can remember first coming to the PBA, and Ariel will tell you, I used to watch 7-8 hours of film a day just to try to get to understand the style of play, the players and the coaches' philosophies, and see how other teams were playing. And it was the same thing when I got to the NBA. It was really brand new. It was like I was walking in as a rookie coach. So the first year it was more just observing, seeing how they did things, how the game was different than the college game, which I was used to, and the FIBA game that I got used to when I was coaching in the Philippines. So there was an adjustment. And then the other thing, to be quite honest with you, you get to the NBA and you're coaching, but all of a sudden now you're coaching Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge and Zach Randolph and Greg Oden, who are NBA All-Stars. And, it kind of throws you back a little bit as a coach. Like, can I really challenge these guys the way I would challenge my other players? And you can, if you have a good relationship with them, they'll run through a wall for you, but you're a little starstruck almost at first, like, hey, what am I going to tell Brandon Roy? You know, he's maybe the best scorer ever to play in the game. So getting used to being around these guys that you've been watching on TV, you know, for most of your life. And I remember the first time, you know, we played LeBron James, you know, and you see how big he is up front. And but it was, you know, it was a little adjustment period, and then it was just basketball as usual. You know, it's pretty much, I think the great thing about the game of basketball is it's played all over the world, and there are some different styles, but it's still basketball. You know, we all still love it. We all, you know, I think, you know, share ideas, and it's not really that different, you know, in the grand scheme of things.
Coach Bill, as a new coach coming into Portland, how did you make a connection with the players as the new person coming in?
I think for all coaches out there, to me, the way you connect, and I can remember even talking to Eric Spoelstra about this when he first got the job in Miami. The best way, some people call it sweat equity, where you're just out on the court. You know, I can remember working with Gerald Honeycutt, where it was just me and him on the court, and we were working on different moves, and I was playing defense on him and trying to bump and bang him a little bit. But when you're out there with them and you're showing them how to get better, I think you build a bond and a trust with them that allows you to coach them as if they were your own son. You know, you think about coaching, you know, Brandon Roy or Victor Oladipo, who's an all-star, and then compare it to coaching your own son. You certainly would coach your son a little bit differently because you guys have a bond, but you can gain that bond by spending time with those players on the court, where they see that you have no agenda, that you're putting them first, that you're helping them make them better. They see that they're getting better. And then once you develop that bond, it's unbreakable. It's like a friendship. And then, you know, if you think they need a little kick in the butt, you know, they'll accept it because they know you care about them. And so you can coach them a little bit more aggressively when you need to. You know, that brings up a good name. I still stay in touch with Pete Michael. And when I first had Pete and he just came right off the plane and played a game. And we didn't really have a bond. We didn't know each other. And so he and I got into it a little bit because I was coaching him aggressively. But then once we had the time to, you know, spend with each other and trust each other, and he saw where I was coming from and I saw where he was coming from, I'll never forget when we beat Alaska in the semifinals to go to the finals. He put his arm around me and he said, I said, great game, man. Good job. And he said, put his arm around me. He said, that's what you brought me here for, right? And we laughed. I said, yes, it is. I said, we almost got into a fight. He would have kicked my butt, but we did have a little bit of tension the first 3 games because I was on him hard. He didn't really know me. And he's like, hey, who's this guy, you know, yelling and screaming at me like a maniac, as you guys know how I coach. But you know, now we're close friends. He's in management in the NBA. He's moving up the ladder quick. I think you're going to see him as a general manager in the NBA soon. But to answer your question, I think that's how you develop that bond, by getting out there on the court with them and showing them that you can make them better and that you're willing to put the work in for them. It's not for me. You know, I'm not trying to get any better at playing basketball. My days are over.
We have Ray Hoble. Ray Hoble has got a question to ask. Ray?
Okay.
Yeah. Coach, good evening, Coach.
Good evening.
Okay. One of the lost arts in basketball is free throw shooting. You have coached both in the NBA and the PBA, and is now part of the NBA coaching staff. But through the years, we've seen players missing a lot of free throws. Was this
Yes.
part of the world's evolving game?
Say that again. Is this what?
Is this part of the world's evolving game? Basketball has
Yeah,
evolved.
I mean, I think free throws have been, you know, you look back all through the years, you know, there've been all these great players, Hall of Famers like Shaq, you know, who never really, I think it was because his hands were so big, but if anyone plays golf out there, free throw shooting to me is like putting. It's just
Okay.
such a different deal because you're all alone. You have the crowd noise. You're isolated on that free throw line, and it takes a lot more focus. Obviously, the better shooters are more naturally good at shooting free throws, but they're so important. There was an old announcer from the Portland Trailblazers back when they won the title in '77 named Bill Shonley, and he would still be around in Portland when I was coaching there. And he was famous when he was the PA announcer during their championship team. And he had a saying that said, you must make your free throws. If you want to win, you have to make your free throws.
Okay.
And it's a simple thing, but it's so true. But yeah, even now, as great as the game has evolved, we have a lot of very good players that are not good free throw shooters. And I think most of it's mental.
Okay. Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome.
Coach, we have a question here from Coach Nash Rosella. How was Coach Ariel as an assistant coach?
Oh my, he's the head coach of my team now. Has
He
to be
was-
a good answer.
Coach A was the best. My nickname for him was Big A. And Big A did all the behind the scenes work. He made my life so much easier. You know, he did all the film work, and you know, he was in Calipari, and Larry Brown taught me this. And they said, when you're an assistant coach, you always want to be one step ahead of the head coach. In that, you know, I would come in and say, hey, Ariel, I need all of Alaska's offensive sets. And he goes, I already got it, coach. Here it is. You know, he would, so to stay ahead of the head coach and anticipate what he might need, what he's going to ask you, how to help him, is very important. And, you know, assistant coaches are the unsung heroes. They're the guys that are behind the scenes that don't get the credit. You know, I would always get all the credit. And yet he did a lot of the work. The only difference to that is when you're the head coach, you get all the blame too. The assistants don't get any of the blame. So.
That's the good part.
Yeah, but no, Ariel was great. And I tried to teach him as much as I could. And he soaked everything up. He picked things up quick. He picked up my drills quick, my offense, my defense. And, you know, that's why I'm trying to help him get in the NBA. He almost had a chance this year to get in the G League. And so hopefully we can help him there. And that was always my thing coming to Manila, is I wasn't coming as an arrogant American who thought he knew more than everyone. I wanted to help all the coaches. And that's why I would work with Ateneo. I would work with Sam Betta. If anybody asked me to do a clinic, I would do it because I wanted to grow the game and share the game with my Filipino coaching brothers. And even though we were in heated battle, you know, you know, felt an obligation to try to help all the coaches down there and all the players as well. And, but Ariel was great for me. And, he's been on a diet too. He's in a lot better shape than he was when I had him. He's not eating as much lechon.
There's a question from our BCAP president. I know you have a good relationship with BCAP. So the president now is Coach Louis Gonzalez. What is the difference between European and American players in terms of impact and knowledge of the game?
Great question. I will say, and I've said this every time not every time, but a lot of times I do clinics, and I used to run the Euro camp for Adidas until they shut it down. I do clinics, you know, all over Europe in the summertime. And this is, to me, a very, very true statement, especially from my opinion. The European players have totally changed the game for us. If you think about what the NBA used to be, it used to be ISO basketball, one-on-one, because they were the greatest players in the world. And a lot of times there wasn't a lot of continuity or ball movement. And the European players that came over here, it's a different culture. One, a lot of them are pros at 13, 14, 15 years old. So they're being coached aggressively by professional coaches in Europe. And Europe has great, great coaches. And their whole thing is share the ball, move the ball. And, you know, you looked at, you know, the Spurs really were the first team, I think, to really take advantage of the international players. At one point, they had one or two non-international players. I mean, they had Ginobili, Parker, Oberto, Duncan. You know, I'm missing guys, but you know, they had a heavy international flavored team. And they were also the team that was known to change the NBA in terms of the freedom of play and the ball movement and the random play, you know, multiple passes, multiple drive and kick, offensive sets. And I think the international players have really made the NBA a better style of play, you know, and that's why I think too, when we talk about how the NBA is different, you know, we talked about analytics, we talked about the 3-point shot, but I think, you know, you got to give the international players, because they come in. It's Bojan Bogdanovic from Croatia, who played for us in Indiana. One of my favorite guys, you know, was a quiet guy, didn't say much, but when he did say something, it was very relevant. And he used to say, Coach BAYNO, I'm trying to think of the words he used. He said, in the NBA, the players say aggressive. In Europe, we call that selfish. So all the NBA guys say, I got to be aggressive. I got to be aggressive. And the international guys are like, yeah, that means you're selfish. You're not passing the ball. But I think the international guys have done so much to, you know, make our game a better, you know, especially aesthetically, you know, in terms of everybody sharing the ball. Yeah, late in the game, we know we're going to Victor Oladipo. You know, the Lakers are going to LeBron or AD. You know, everybody has their one or two guys. But throughout the course of the game, I think they've really helped change the NBA game by sharing the ball and promoting ball movement and unselfish play.
We have Ruben Terrado here from spin.ph. Ruben, you have a question for Coach?
Yes, Coach. Good day to you. Just want to ask again about your talk and text teams during your time. How would you describe that team with the likes of Mark Telan, Patrick Ran, and then, of course, they won the championship the year after. So how would you describe your team at that time? And talk about a little bit about Asi Taulava, who is still playing up to this day.
Is he really? Osi's
Yes,
still
Coach.
playing?
Yeah, he's still
Yes,
playing.
Coach.
How old is he?
47, something like that, 48.
God bless him. I'll tell you, he always was in great shape. Now I love the Filipino players. You know, it was a fun journey. I mentioned earlier, I can remember coming in. The first guy I met was Frankie, you know, and then he drove me to the facility, and there was Ariel, and he had all the video, and I looked at the team, and I just said, you know what? You know, we didn't have a lot of Filipino Americans on the team. And I looked at the other teams, and, you know, I saw all these Americans that I knew from back home. And I'm like, where are all our Filipino Americans? And we didn't have many. So I said, you know what, let's do an open tryout and try to, you know, increase, you know, the Filipino Americans that we have on the team. And we ended up getting guys like Kenny Evans, but I just kind of came in there with a clean slate. I didn't know anybody's game. So my whole thing to the guys was, look, I'm playing the guys that play the best. I don't care if at the time Jerome Ergecito was one of the leading players on the team. And I just said, we are starting from scratch. We're going to scrimmage. We're going to put in our offensive and defensive principles. And then I'm playing the 8 or 9 or the 10 best players. I don't care what your reputation is. And I think that really helped our competitiveness. And a guy like Kenny Evans came out of nowhere to be a starter. And Ibet Damape, who people told me was too slow and couldn't play, ended up becoming a really good player. He had a great year for us there. And Mark Talan and Vic Pablo and all those guys that, you know, they told me Vic was at the end of his rope and, you know, was kind of getting older. And he ended up having a great 2 conferences for me. And, you know, Mark Talan had been traded and he played great for us. And then we had good chemistry with our imports and our local players, which was important because Honeycutt was a very unselfish player and he could pass the ball. But a great story was, I didn't obviously speak any Tagalog, and Yvette didn't speak great English, and he was my point guard. So he was my coach on the floor. So Ariel and we had a system. I would scream at Ariel in English, and Ariel would scream at Yvette in Tagalog.
And maybe he
turn
doesn't
around and go to
understand
Ariel,
also.
hey, tell him to hit ahead, and then he'd scream it out in Tagalog. But they were all fun to coach. They were great guys. I miss them, and I owe so much to them because we had a lot of success. We, almost won the championship, and when I got there, we were like in 10th place. So it was a lot of fun, and I felt good about helping MVP and Ricky Vargas and Panlilio and all the management staff up there, because they were so competitive themselves. They wanted to win. And, I felt good that even though I didn't win the championship, I felt like I set the table for them and Coach Joel to finish it out. But even Willie Miller, God, it was so much fun to coach Willie, and Ossie was a beast. He reminded me of, like the Greg Oden of, before Greg got hurt. We would really run a lot of offense through Ossie, similar to the way we did with Honeycutt, where we call it the first big lane on any make or miss. That first big is getting out and running. And then we want to try to drop it to them and play inside out. And we had different actions that we would go to. And if they doubled, how, we would handle it. But all those guys, I miss them all. We had a good crew there. We had a nice run.
Oh, so there's aspect of the game are you looking to scout when you're scouting an opponent? When you're scouting an opponent, what is the particular aspect of the game that you're looking at?
Well, I would give you all the film and then tell you, give me the game plan. That was how I did it. No.
Oh, in the NBA.
Well, it's the same, really. I think you want to keep it simple. You don't want to give them 5 or 6 things to focus on. You want to look at, to me, it's 3, maybe 4 things that you have to stop. And a lot of it in the NBA is, you want to you have your rules. Everybody has our rules. So no matter who we play, we're guarding middle pick and roll a certain way with the 5 and the 4. Those may be different. We may be in what we call a drop with the 5. We may be in a hard hedge or a blitz, or whatever you want to call it. There's different terminology. Then you have your side pick and roll. You have your post defensive rules. You have if you play a heavy ISO player, you have your ISO defensive rules. But you also then look at, all right, you want to try to take them out of something. So you just try to pick 2 or 3 things that, look, this is what they're really good at. So we're going to try to take this away, and it's no different than the PBA. I mean, the scouting is identical. Basketball is basketball. So the same things that I do in the NBA now when it's my scout, because now I'm like Ariel, I have the scouts. Before, in the PBA, I was the head coach, and, I would watch the film, and then Ariel and I would talk and come up with the 2 or 3 things that we really wanted to focus on. Sometimes it's against fast teams. The number 1 key is transition defense. Just do not give up any easy baskets. So maybe you're telling 1, 2, and 3 on the shot, you're automatically back. You're only letting 4 and 5 crash the offensive boards so that you have defensive transition floor balance. Sometimes it's a team that's just a phenomenal offensive rebounding team where you got to get your guys locked in that I cannot let my man get the rebound. And a lot of times, we would say, hey, of all the things that are going on in this game, if we win the rebound battle, we're going to win the game. So it's just, every game is different, but you really want to try to pick, 3, maybe 4 things to really hone in on with your guys and get them locked in on, this is what we have to do to win this game.
There's a question. Do you ever think a Filipino will reach the NBA? A local Filipino. Have you heard about Kai
Yes.
Soto? There's a lot of question about Kai Soto, the
Yes.
big Yeah.
I actually have a connection to Kai Soto because Dickel called me about him last year and said, hey, he may be coming to the States. Keep an eye on him. And then he came to the States. And ironically, one of the coaches that's helping develop him is a coach by the name of Frank Molak. And he was the high school teammate of Nick Nurse. And Nick Nurse, who was the world champion coach of the Toronto Raptors, and I are very close friends because we were assistants with the Raptors for 2 years. So Frank, has been involved helping Kai out. And the scouting report I get from Kai is he's still young. He needs to get tougher. He needs to be a little bit more aggressive, which is normal for any kid that age, but that he has a skill set already. He has an NBA skill set in that he can shoot and pass for a 7-foot kid. So hopefully, he's training on, the other stuff and how physical the NBA game is. But Kai may be he may be the first Filipino. I can remember saying that back in 2001, that eventually there's going to be an NBA player come from the Philippines. It's just a matter of time. At the time, there was
Japet.
Japet was a young kid that I worked with Ateneo, and he was 6'8" and long and had an NBA body. And, I said, hey, Japet's, if he were born and raised in the U.S. playing against the best players every summer and in high school, it might have sped up his development. And I know he's had a really good career over there, but he was the first kid that I saw, if there's some more Japets coming up the line. And Kai Soto, similar to Japet, he's just bigger, right? They're both big guys that play on the perimeter that can shoot. And so, yeah, I'm hoping. I don't know Kai personally, but I do have somewhat of a connection to him. I'd love to help him out if he ever needed any advice. I'd love to talk to him. I'm not allowed to work with him because he's a prospect and I'm an NBA coach, but let's hope he's the first one. And if he's not, I think there's someone coming down the line. You're going to have a Filipino NBA player here soon. I really believe that.
He should have married the Filipino. So should have been.
I know you couldn't get me any dates. Ariel. Couldn't get a date.
Oh well.
You're right, though. I should have married a Filipino.
Would have been
sweetest women in the
18-year-old
world.
now. Would have been 18-year-old now. So almost ready.
I know.
So
Yeah.
there's another
missed out.
prospect. Yeah.
You should have told me that 20 years ago. You never told me that.
Oh yeah.
I had you working too hard. You had no time. You
They
had no
they,
free
they
time.
might Google the story, coach. They know. They know. Everybody knows. The Filipina.
Everyone knows I certainly proposed to enough Filipino women. Just none of them said yes.
There's another Filipino American that's up and coming, Remy Martin.
Oh, he's Filipino.
He's
I
half
didn't know that.
Filipino. Half Filipino. So what
And
do you
where's
think
he
of that?
playing? I just read something about him on Hoops Hype. Where did he play?
I think he's gonna end up in the G League.
Did he play in college?
No, he played in college. He played college ball.
Where?
Arizona State.
Arizona State.
Ah, okay. Yes, he played.
I
for
think he's.
a good-
I think he's applying for the NBA draft.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and he had a really good year. I saw his numbers. I did not know he was half. Well, Jordan Clarkson's in the NBA. He's half Filipino.
Yeah.
So we already got one. You forgot we
Yeah, well,
he's-
there's just no homegrown.
yeah.
Like that was born here.
right.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Jalen Green is also half Filipino, and he's going to the G League.
Oh, Jalen Green is the one.
Jalen Green.
Really?
Yeah, he's half Filipino.
Wow. He's from Fresno, California, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny because he's like legitimately, they're saying he is an absolute one and done, surefire, top 10 pick. I haven't seen him play, but the hype on him is he is absolutely has a bright future in the NBA.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I did not know that. So Remy Martin and Jalen Green. Wow.
Half Filipino. What's your
So, yeah,
go-to?
so Ariel, you got to get all the coaches down there and get your development games up to point. Let's get a real Filipino in the NBA. 100%.
Yeah, we should.
You know what?
It's gonna happen soon.
Trust me. and now that you have the NBA academies, you have the NBA academy in Asia. You know, I'm sure if we can find a good young Filipino, I'm sure there's some Filipinos down there in that academy already. Hopefully, they're not all Chinese or Korean. But did you guys know about the NBA academy in China for the high school kids?
Yes, yes. There's a coach that I know that runs it. One of
That's
them.
a great idea. Great. I'm so happy the NBA did that. I can remember 20 years ago doing clinics for Basketball Without Borders, and it was all based on the players, and talking to Kim Bahuni, who runs the international basketball for the NBA, and say, hey, Kim, and Amadou Gallo Fall, who runs it in Africa, NBA Africa, that we got to do more for the coaches. You know, we come down here, we coach the players, and then we leave, and we don't leave any basis or infrastructure to teach the coaches how to make the players better. So we were doing a lot more clinics, but that's what these academies are now. You have, you know, coaches, some local, some ex-NBA coaches, some ex-college coaches that have these kids year round competing, practicing, playing. I did a clinic when we played in India for the academy team, and I was impressed. Just in a 1 hour clinic, I put them through our 5-on-0 fast break drill, Ariel, that we did every day. And as you remember, and they picked it up quick. And then we added an analytical attack and kick drill that I got from Nick Nurse. He actually has a name for it. They run it, they call it open, but it's a lot of random play where you might start with one action, a pick and roll, a pin down, and then it's just nonstop quick decisions. Pass, catch, shoot, and multiple attacking kicks. Try to get in the paint, you know, get to the rim. If not, kick it out. If you don't have the three, you re-attack, you re-kick. And they picked it up really quick. They had some good players. So hopefully we have some Filipino players in the academy and down in China.
Coach, I have a question.
Okay.
With more than 20 years experience and over 14 years in the NBA, can you give us 5 qualities that a basketball coach should possess in order to be successful?
I think number one is communication. You know, you have to, especially in this day and age, you know, for the older guys out there, when we grew up, it was just, you did what, if the coach said, go run through that wall, you just ran through the wall. That's how you were raised. And the millennials are different now. I think they want more of an explanation. Well, why do you want me to do this? Why are we doing it this way? Why are we doing it that way? So to me, communication is important. You have to have that relationship. You have to build that trust. Being able to develop them. So having individual developmental drills to make them better, whether it's their ball handling, their shooting, their passing, their defense, their rebounding, teaching them to use their body, you know, whatever it is. I think, you know, you have to have that, you know, and then, you know, the ability to scout other opponents. You know, I think the only way you do that is to watch film. That's why I think you see in the NBA, you have a ton of head coaches that weren't really good players, never played in the NBA, were never a head coach before, but they were video and it started out in the video room. So they were watching so much video, it really accelerated their growth offensively and defensively in terms of coverages, and then offensive counters to those coverages and different play sets, different offensive philosophies. So I think you have to have that. Trying to think, that's 3. Sadly, I think, you know, you have to, a lot of it's non-basketball related. You have to have relationships and networks, because most guys only hire, and Ariel will tell you this, we tried to help him get a G League job. There were probably 500 coaches going for 1 or 2 positions. So, you know, you have to network and get to know people and try to get to clinics, and, you know, because guys really don't hire guys that they don't know. So to get in the NBA, you know, you really have to have a strong network relationships. And then let me think, what would be another one? I think your ability to get along with people. You know, everybody in the NBA has big egos. Every staff, you know, guys all have different opinions, and there's a million ways to skin a cat, as we say. You know, you can, you know, if you get the players to buy in, you know, there's a bunch of styles. Like I worked for, you know, PJ Carlesimo, Larry Brown, Nate McMillan, Rick Adelman, Dwayne Casey, you know, and they all had different styles, but they all won. So I think too, you know, maybe, you know, being a student of the game, I think to be an NBA coach, you really have to study film. You have to watch film because you'll learn so much, you know, as we say in the NBA, the tape doesn't lie. You'll see which of your players, you know, you can trust, who the best players are. You can see what they need to do to get better. And then you need to have the ability to be able to break film down so that you can be a good scout. So I think those are some of the key factors. I might have missed a few, but I think those are the most important ones.
Thanks, Coach.
In line with that, Coach, we have a question from Coach Ricky all the way from Indonesia. So where I think he knows a story about you. Where did the idea came from? You wrote 100 letters to coaches throughout the country, and only PJ Carlesimo who responded.
Yeah.
Can you tell about the
Yeah.
story, Coach?
True story. True story. So I was a college player. At the time, we did not have the big sneaker camps. So there was no Adidas camp, no Nike camp, no Steph Curry Under Armour camp. So the best camp in America at the time was the 5-star basketball camp. And there were high-level coaches. Calipari came from there. Pitino came from there. You know, Hubie Brown, Chuck Daly, Mike Fratello. And, you know, I wanted to become a really good coach. And I wanted to, you know, I would go work the camp as a college counselor. And so not only was I learning, and it was a very competitive camp, but I saw all these college coaches that would come to the camp and they'd pull up in their shiny Cadillacs and they'd have their, you know, beautiful college shirts and slacks on and brand new sneakers, you know, promoting their university. And I was like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. And they were coming there to recruit the players and to evaluate them. And so at the end of my senior year, I just there was a college handbook that had all the addresses and the head coaches. And I just wrote a nice form letter talking about how I thought I could help them, what my experience was, which wasn't much at the time. And I remember I wrote probably more than 100, and I got rejected on 99% of them. But PJ Carlesimo, who had saw me working at the 5-star camp, saw me teaching stations, saw me coaching my team, sent back a response and said, hey, I know who you are. I've seen you coach, you know, give me a call. Let's talk. And then I went to a college in Connecticut called Sacred Heart University. And this is a good lesson, actually. And I talked about it before about networking. Despite all of that, I never would have gotten the job except the current vice president of my university, Sacred Heart, where I was obviously a star player and I had really good relationships with people. I'll never forget. I remember his name. His name was Chuck Dees. He was a really good guy and great vice president, great administrator at Sacred Heart. He came from Seton Hall. So he was very tight with the president of Seton Hall, who was PJ's boss. So he actually, unbeknownst to me, PJ called him and said, hey, tell me about this kid, Billy Bayno. And so Chuck gave me a great recommendation. And that's really the only reason why I got the job. But yeah, that was a funny story. And that's the same way with the NBA. You know, I had a lot of success in college, but I could not get in the NBA when I left UNLV. It took me 5 years, and I finally got in because of a relationship I had with Kevin Pritchard, who I coached at Kansas, and he was the player personnel director for the Blazers. But if I didn't know Kevin, I might still be coaching in the PBA or coaching in the minor leagues or back coaching in college. So for all the young coaches out there, if anybody's out there listening to this, you know, networking is such a crucial part of, growing in this business and getting opportunities. Like they say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that holds true in the coaching profession as well. But the story of the 100 letters was true. It might have been more than 100. I could still remember typing them out. And then, I also learned, I'm not going to mention the school, but there was one school that sent me a return letter. It was a rejection letter, but it wasn't even properly spaced. It was like sideways on the paper. So some of the words were cut out. So that was a university that I was like, you know what? I probably don't want to go coach there. They can't even write a good return form letter.
So there's a question, a bit technical now. So what can you say about using man-to-man as compared to zone defense that seems to be sweeping the amateur ranks now? Or because like the zone is getting popular even in the NBA and the international game.
The zone is really popular in the NBA because not a lot of NBA coaches know how to attack a zone because they've only coached in the NBA where very few teams play it. Now, the zone in the NBA is much tougher to play because we have the 2.9 rule. So you can't be in the paint defensively for more than 2.9 seconds. And a lot of times in a zone, you don't have a man. Sometimes you're playing an area, or like the big guys might be halving. We call it half the high post, where the weak side guard is sitting in the high post. And then that big has got to be ready to be, he's kind of halfway there because he might also have to drop and play somebody that comes underneath the rim. But I think it's imperative as a coach that you have a zone in your package. And even in the NBA, there's a lot of great coaches that are great at ATOs. We call those after timeouts. So those are plays after timeouts. And there's a lot of really good, after timeout coaches that run good stuff that you haven't seen. It's not part of their normal package. It's just a random play that they'll diagram. And so if you play a zone out of a timeout, a lot of times in Portland, and even Rick Adelman really bought into it and ended up using the zone where you just, hey, we're in zone, one possession here out of the timeout. Let's blow up their ATO play. It's also used if you're down. Like I can remember we were in Minnesota and we were playing against Mike Brown was the coach, playing against the Lakers, and we got down 25 in the third quarter. And we went to a zone and we got back in the game and ended up tying it up and almost won the game. So it breaks the rhythm of the other team. They get it going. They're kicking your butt. You're playing man to man. Everything they're attacking your defense. And all of a sudden you switch it up and you throw a zone at them. And a lot of times it becomes a stop sign where the other team goes, whoa, okay, they're in zone. So they're not as aggressive anymore. And if you have one player on the other team that's not a great shooter, now you can play 5 versus 4. You dare that guy to beat you. Nick Nurse did it in the finals, had never even played a boxing one. And Steph Curry was killing him. And he said in the huddle, and this is why I think Nick is one of the best coaches in the world right now. He looked at his players and said, hey, what about a boxing one on Steph? I know we haven't practiced it, but he drew a diagram and said, you guys are going to be in the box. Here's who's in the front. Here's who's in the back. Van Vliet, you are going to face guard Steph. Do not let him catch the ball. Deny him all over the court. And they ended up cutting a 20-point lead and would have won the game. But Andre Iguodala hit a 3, and that's the guy on that team that you wanted to take the shot to beat you. So, but I think it's imperative that you have a zone. I think it's also important that you have a 1-2-1-1 full court trapping press and or a 3/4 court trapping press. Because in the NBA, with the shot clock, if there's 2.5 minutes to go and you're down 8, you're probably, if you don't have, or 10 or 12, you concede the game if you don't have a trapping defense that can speed the game up, get you more possessions, and give you a chance to win the game. So I think that's important to have that in your package, and it doesn't take that long to teach. And a lot of teams don't know how to attack it, especially in the NBA. When you throw a 1-2-1-1, full court trap on a team, a lot of times they panic because they haven't seen it. They haven't seen it since college. So I think it's important at any level to have those for different reasons. I'm trying to think, Ariel, did we play a zone for talking text? Did we have a zone in our package?
We did, but
Yeah.
very seldom.
Yeah. But you might even, if it saves you 1 or 2 possessions,
Yeah.
like the other thing you use the zone for is against a heavy pick and roll team. If you have a team that's like, I can remember Steve Nash and Amari Stoudemire in the pick and roll in Portland, we would come out of a timeout and we would throw a zone at them, and that would take them out of the pick and roll. So, they may score on you, but a lot of times it would break their rhythm and force them to go into, another offense, because it was a rhythm breaker. And in the pick and roll, you can't really run zone. You can't really run pick and roll against the zone. So I think it's important at all levels. You have to have your base defense. I love that, well, let me put it this way. I hate that in America, a lot of our young youth coaches are teaching zone, because zone, you got to have man-to-man defensive principles in your game to be good. And the zone, you don't learn any of that. You're not really learning how to guard your man. You're not learning about weak side rotations, because you don't have that. You only have that in man-to-man. So I would, if it was up to me and I was the head of USA Basketball, I would not let our young players play zone. But then once they got into the college ranks, they're going to end up playing it, because most colleges do play zone. I think it's important to have both in your package as a coach, and to have that full court press or a 3/4 court press, but some type of pressing defense that'll speed the game up and give you a chance. If you're down 10, like we were down, we were up 23 against Toronto in the third quarter, and then Nick threw he threw both at us. He threw a 1-2-1-1 full court trap at us, and then he mixed it up and threw in a 2-2-1 3/4 court trap. And we panicked a little bit. We had some turnovers. They came down and hit threes. The crowd got into the game, and next thing you know, we ended up losing the game. So that's a great question, and I encourage all the coaches to have both in their package.
What's the difference between PBA practices and NBA practices?
PBA practices are a lot harder and a lot longer. The big change in the NBA now, and that's something I probably should have answered on Canito's question earlier. I didn't get to that. We are big now on, and it's part of analytics, on what we call load management. And because our young players come from an AAU system where they rarely practice, all they do is play, and they play year round. And there's some days where they'll play 5 games in one day in an AAU tournament, because they have 200 teams and they only have a 3-day tournament. And who's ever running the tournament, is trying to make money. So, to win the championship, you might have to play 5 games on the last day. So players, aren't like the old school guys. I think they've worn themselves out. They're more, you see more injuries now. So they call load management. We have this technology that players wear on a device on their uniform, which measures their output. And if they get to a point where their body has surpassed its limits in terms of how much load they put on it from running and moving, that's why you see guys get rest days. The other thing the NBA has gone to now, which the PBA already did when I got there, was no morning shoot-arounds. Very few teams are doing morning walkthroughs. At home, they're doing afternoon walkthroughs. So instead of coming in at 10 in the morning, waking guys up at 8, because a lot of guys in the NBA don't fall asleep. Their body clocks are, because the games are late, they sleep at 2 or 3 in the morning. That's just the natural time they go to bed. And we did sleep studies in Toronto with probably arguably the best performance coach in the NBA, called Alex McKechnie, who worked for the Lakers with Kobe and Shaq for years. He did a sleep study, and it showed that when players get 8 or more uninterrupted hours of sleep, their energy levels, and we charted their energy levels during the game, were higher in the fourth quarter than they were in the first. And it kind of goes against your philosophy as a coach of you want to work, you want to do the morning walkthrough, but teams are still doing the game plan in the afternoon. They're just letting their guys sleep. And I know in Toronto, it's helped us. It's really helped us in Indiana. Guys would sleep 10, 11 hours straight because they didn't have to get up. And then they had incredible, energy. And our president did a study on, morning walkthroughs versus afternoon walkthroughs. And we won 74% of our games, and we were better in every statistical category, every single one down the line on offense and defense. If there were 30 categories, field goal percentage, free throw percentage, 3-point field goal percentage, offensive rebounds, assists, you name it. And it was all because they had fresh minds and fresh legs. And conversely, when we did the morning walkthroughs, we won 52% of our games, and we were worse in all those areas. So, making sure players are fresh. So in the NBA, because we play so many games, our practices are very short. A lot of our practices are mental. We'll show them the video. All right, here's what we didn't do well. We got to get better at and clean up. Here's what we did well at both ends. We show them a short, maybe 4 or 5 minute video clip. And then we go out and we work smart. We're still working, but we're not practicing for an hour and a half the day before a game. We're not sprinting up and down, scrimmaging. We're doing more half court work. We're sometimes we'll go against our video assistants so nobody gets hurt, but they're still getting muscle memory. And we're working on our defensive coverages. They're not allowed to shoot the ball, or we'll shoot it at the end, but we'll make them go through like 4 or 5 rotations where the ball's changing sides of the court, and we have different coverages, and it's encouraging our guys to talk. And even though they're only going 3/4 speed, they're getting the muscle memory. And then we finish with a shot where they got to block out. They got to turn and see their man and hit them. So the practices are shorter in the NBA. Now the training camp isn't. The training camp is very similar. So we'll go hard for 2 weeks in the training camp. We'll do 2-a-days, probably 3 days a week. And the training camp goes through really the entire preseason. And then even the first, Coach McMillan always likes to say the first 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season, we're still in training camp. We're still learning. We still have things we have to put in. But once you get after that first month where guys are really playing heavy minutes, you're playing sometimes 4 games in a week, you're playing back-to-back games, that's where you have to shorten the practices. And in the PBA, you didn't, because, we had only one game a week.
Yeah.
The bigger thing in the PBA was, I thought you had to be smart. You didn't want to practice hard for 6 days. So you wanted to give them at least 1 day off a week, which was, I always gave them the day after the game off so they could recover. And then we might practice hard for 2 days. And then the third day would be a mental day. It would be a shooting day. We'd walk through defensive coverages, but it would be very light, and it would be a fun day. We'd do a lot of shooting. And then we might come back and practice one more hard day, but then always the day before the game was another very light day, mental day. Like we might go against Alaska's offense at 3/4 speed versus the scout team, but it wasn't truly live. We weren't, finishing by letting the other team score. We were smart how we did it. And I thought we always had fresh legs, and the way we played was really important. We played fast. We were trying to score 90 points a game. That was our goal every game. And I think we almost averaged 90, but there were a lot of games we were scoring in the hundreds in a 40-minute game because we had fresh legs and fresh minds. So that's a big, big difference. And I think same thing in Europe. Europe is like the PBA. In Europe, they practice twice a day. One of the days is a lifting and shooting practice. The other day is the other practice is the actual real practice. So, it's you can, when you're not playing as many games, you can practice a little bit harder, but I still think you have to be smart. I know as a young coach, I cost our team games by over practicing the day before the game. And then during the game, I couldn't wonder, I was like, how come we can't make a shot? How come it looks like we're playing in mud? And then I figured it out. You got to be careful the day before a game, and that should be a mental practice. a shooting practice and get them in and out, and then make sure they're getting their rest at night.
We have a question from Coach Benji Sipin. Coach Benji.
Hi, Coach. You
Hey, Benji.
you talked about the zone defense earlier, but how about your principles in switching to limit distance of defensive rotations?
Yeah, if you have the personnel, to me, switching is the best defense. If you have big guards that can cover big guys on a switch, like if your point guard is Brandon Roy, who was 6'6" and 235 pounds, we weren't afraid to switch. I'm not in favor of doing it right away. I think you should have a man-to-man defense as your main package. You should have a zone that you use in special situations. And then if you can save your switching till the second half, it helps you even more, because then they're not used to it. But like if you start out the game, and I honestly think, and it's not a knock, but I think, my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that the Rockets switch everything and they do it all game long. And I think when you do that, eventually the other team gets in a rhythm of how to attack those switches and what your counters are to those switches. And I think that hurts them in the long run in the playoffs. It didn't hurt Golden State because Golden State just had so many good players that were, with Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant, they just switch, and that's why most teams in the NBA, if you look, their pick and rolls are only set with the 5-man. The 5-man becomes one of the most important guys, because that's the one position that teams are a little bit leery of switching on, because point guards can blow by the 5-man on a switch, and then the 5-man can go down on the block and go rebound the basketball. There's no way that point guard can block them out. Now, teams have also become good at double switching. So if you can follow me here, let's say you set a middle pick and roll with the 1 and the 5 and you switch, and now the 5 dives down in the paint. Well, the 4 is in the corner. So 4's man can now pass off and take the 5, and the 1 bumps out and takes the 4, who's really a perimeter player. So now you got a bigger guy who has a better chance to block that guy out or guard him in the post. So they call that switch and pass. And if you're going to switch, and it's not hard, you just put it in. And really, wherever that 4 is, he may be in the corner, he may be in the slot. He's still going to be in a help side position where he can still catch that 5 rolling and bump that 1 back out to his man. And now, you're even in better position to switch. So, no, if you have the personnel, and even if you don't, if you got tough guys, if you got a tough point guard that'll fight a big, and then you learn how to switch and pass, it doesn't matter that much either. But it messes teams' offenses up. It's like a zone in that as soon as teams start switching, you can't run any of your plays, because your plays are predicated on the 5 pinning down for a 2 to get them open. But if they can switch it, now, a lot of times the teams switch to deny, so you can't even make that entry pass. And it becomes a stop sign. All of a sudden, your offensive players are like, whoa, they're switching everything. What do I do? So, you have to prepare for it offensively if you're going against it. You have to work on it in practice. But switching has become a big part of the NBA, and I like it. I'm a believer in it. You just, a lot of it depends on matchups too. Like if you have Paul George guarding James Harden, and they bring up a point guard, you don't want to switch that, because now James Harden is on a little point guard and it's over. You want to keep your best guy on your best guy. And in the NBA, we call that likability. So you're only switching like size players, not same size players. So if you've got your best defender on their best player, you want to keep him on there as much as possible. So those are some matchups that you don't want to switch. If you understand, if that makes sense. Like if Ariel and I were playing, you didn't want Ariel switching on me, because that was a bucket every time for me.
I'll give you the jump shot.
I would take it every time. Right in your face, Ariel.
Okay, thank you, Coach.
Okay. You're welcome.
So again, there's no, your number one fan wants to say hi, Bernadette.
Berna.
Yeah. So
Tell
you-
Berna I said hello. I haven't
Yeah.
forgotten her. Berna would text me before every game, good luck. After every game, if we won, congratulations. If we lost, keep your head up, coach. The other thing that I learned in the Philippines was how to text. When I came down to the Philippines in 2001, the United States my friends had no idea when I would call them back and explain the texting situation. And the Filipinos were unbelievable with their thumbs. They could text, 500 characters in a minute. I was misspelling words and had big thumbs and was messing up, but it was technology innovation that started in the Philippines. And it to me, I don't like it a little bit in that it takes a lot of people don't want to call now, but at the same time, it makes your life so much more efficient. You could be doing 5 things at once with a text conversation. You could be, getting a home loan on your house. You can be doing something else. You can be texting with the coach.
and there wasn't a keypad then. There was all numbers.
Yeah. We had to get the C, you had to go ABC. You had to hit it 3 times. But no, that was interesting. And then sure enough, it took off. Now everybody in the United States texts. Nobody calls anybody anymore. But the Philippines, to me, that was the first country I had ever heard of that was texting. They get the credit. MVP. He was making all the money off it too. God bless him.
So 2 seasons ago, Victor Oladipo improved a lot, was named All-Star. This season, it was a bonus. Who among your current players have the best chance of becoming most improved pacer for next season?
Let me see. That's a good question. That's a great question. We have 2 really good young guards. Edmund Sumner, who played at Xavier, who's been up and down from the G League to us. And because we have a lot of veteran guards, he doesn't get an opportunity. And the same as Aaron Holiday from UCLA. But Aaron has played more. He's kind of fought his way into our rotation. But they're 2 really good young players that, you got to have the opportunity. I think one of the reasons why Sabonis was an all-star this year, he worked his butt off in the summer and he developed, but he also went from coming off the bench to starting. So he averaged 8 or 9 more minutes a game, which helped his production. But I think Aaron Holiday and Ed Sumner are 2 of the guys that really have a chance to jump out and get better next year. And then we've got other good players that just haven't had a chance. TJ Leaf from UCLA and Alize Johnson, who was a smaller college player from Missouri State. They just haven't had an opportunity yet. So if they get a chance, I think they could jump out. But I think it's more likely that Aaron Holiday or Ed Sumner, increase their minutes in the rotation next year and can, be the most improved player. So we'll have to wait and see on that one.
So what's going to happen with the NBA, coach? Any news from inside?
No one knows. There's just so much that the entire world doesn't know about this virus. And my sister's a doctor. Obviously, she got the brains in the family. I didn't. But she's got a lot of colleagues that are epidemiologists, and this is a new virus. We still don't know if right now it looks like even if you clear the virus and have the antibodies that you can still get reinfected. They've had reinfections across the world, so we don't know about that. We know that asymptomatic people are spreading it. And then like you and I talked before we got on the show, Ariel, there's not enough testing worldwide. We don't have enough tests here. So until you can test to find out who has it, who doesn't have it, people are going to spread it. And, it's tough because in our country right now, our economy is getting, all over the world, the economies are getting destroyed. And so, you want to open up, you want to try to get back to businesses as usual, but it's a huge risk because even in 1918, when we had the flu epidemic here that killed 50 million people across the world and killed, I think, 700,000 here, we got to the first flattening of the curve, as they say, where infections went down, deaths went down. And then, like, the mayor of San Francisco wanted to celebrate through a parade, and then caused a second wave, which was worse than the first wave. So now we're starting to opening up states, and a lot of the health experts are saying it's too early. We should be waiting. And a lot of states are not waiting. So now we're fearful. The NBA can't do anything till probably we have to maybe by May 15th look at where we are state by state. The other challenge the NBA has is, competitive advantage. So New York has already said there's no sports in New York till at earliest the middle of August. So if that's the case, then we can't play the NBA season if that was for the whole country. It's not, but say we, July 1st, cases are down, deaths are down. People are thinking, you know what, we've got it under control. Let's go to practice. Well, they can't practice in New York. So how are you going to let the Pacers and the Celtics or whoever practice? And there's going to be multiple states, I think, that, even through the late June are going to be on these lockdown stay-at-home orders. And basketball is very contagious. You can't social distance in basketball, unless you play zone and you're 6 feet away and you let guys shoot. But, you're breathing on everybody. And again, it's not so much a threat for the young people, but it's the longer this virus exists, the more powerful it gets. It can mutate. It can start. It's right now killing young people, thank God, at a very low rate, but there are young people dying of it. But as that virus grows stronger, it can mutate and get stronger. So we just don't know. Nobody has any answers. I think Adam Silver's handled it brilliantly. He's been out front telling the truth, saying, look, we don't know. We can't give you a date right now. We can't give you a scenario. They're looking at all different types of scenarios, at maybe just going right to the playoffs and having all the East Coast teams go to one location, like maybe to Orlando, Florida, where you have all the Disney, where you have the hotels that are empty, you have basketball, different arenas. And then the West, maybe they go to Vegas, where you have the same thing. But there's a lot of complications with that too, because you're going to almost have to test every day, because, we could get tested and not have it, but then the next day we get it and we don't know we have it and we're asymptomatic. And then the first person that tests positive, you're probably going to have to shut everything down, and you've wasted all that money, because whoever tests positive has probably been spreading it for 3, 4, 5 days with no symptoms. And then just do the math. Every person that they come in contact with, that they touch. So it's just, there's so much we don't know right now. We got to put people's health first. But it's, I feel for the politicians, because this is tough. You can't just sit back and watch your economy get absolutely destroyed. But at what risk are you willing to sacrifice lives? And I'm glad I don't have to make that decision. But to answer your question, we have no idea, none. We're still trying to play. We're still hoping we can play, but we're still, probably a month away from even knowing whether we can start up individual workouts where it's one coach, one player, which would reduce, the potential of infection. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, but we're just not there yet. We don't know enough, and, who knows? No one has an answer.
Sir Quinito, any more questions before we wrap it up?
Yeah, maybe just one last question, Coach Bill. What are the players who've worked with you, your different NBA teams? Could you choose the 5 best players whom you've worked with through Portland, through Minnesota, through Toronto, and through Indiana? You've worked with Aldridge, you've worked with Rubio, you've worked with DeRozan. Maybe your top five, if you have.
You know, Canito, of course, you put me in a bad position here now. This is like saying, who's your favorite child? You know, I mean, I currently right now, you know, we have such a great group of guys at Indiana, you know, Victor Oladipo, Miles, you know, Domantas, TJ McConnell. I mean, you know, Aaron Holiday, the Holiday brothers are, you know, I honestly, in terms of in talent, you know, I'll give you that. In talent, you know, Sean Marion is up there. I coached him in college. You know, he's right up at the top. Zach Randolph, LaMarcus Aldridge, Brandon Roy, from my Portland days, Minnesota, Kevin Love and Ricky Rubio. Pekovic would have been right up there if he didn't get hurt. Toronto, Kyle Lowry, DeMar are right at the top. And then Indiana, you know, Victor is such a special person, both on and off the court. I can't say enough about how talented he is, how dedicated he is, and what a great human being he is. And, you know, Malcolm Brogdon now this year is right up there, and Sabonis now becoming an all-star. And he's like my son. You know, he and I spend so much time together working in the summer. So I just threw about 20 names at you. That's the best I can do.
Thank you.
That way I won't lose any players. I won't have any players calling me and say, hey, you didn't mention my name. You know, the one thing I was thinking, guys, I would love if you had more time to promote this. We could do this again and try to get on all the old CBA coaches. Try to get Norman and Tim and Yang Yao and Jung Uachiko and Ryan and just tell some old war stories, because I love my time there. Those games were competitive, and you know, I hoped that I made the league better. I tried to help as many players as I could, but I love my experience there. You know, sadly, my mom passed and my dad passed 16 months ago, and so now I have a bunch of writers that want to write a book on an autobiography, and if that ever does come, I'm going to have one whole chapter just on my experience in the Philippines and how much fun it was, and it was really a great time in my life. And if you know, Ariel, I went back there for at least 2 years to consult, so I wasn't there full time, but I would come back for a month and then go home and then come back for another month. So I was still involved. It was about a 3-year process that I was involved with the PBA, and I loved it, and it'll always hold a special place in my heart. You know, it was competitive. The coaches there challenged me to be a better coach, and it was just a lot of fun. You know, the fans were phenomenal, and I tell people all the time, nobody loves basketball more than the Filipinos. I actually became friends with a young Filipino that worked in the grocery store in Toronto where I lived, and his name was Chris. And so I would always tease him and say, hey, pare, pare, pare. You know, it's one of the few words I knew. And he laughed. And he knew me. He was a big PBA fan. He's like, Coach BAYNO. So he and I still stay in touch. But the fans there are the best in the world, without a doubt. I don't even think there's a close second. You know, our fans in America, yeah, they support their local teams, but the Filipino fans, you know, are a whole nother level. And so maybe we can do this again and try to get some former, you know, some of the guys that I competed against. I'd love to talk to Chot and talk to some of the other coaches and get more people on here if that's possible. So if you can do that, I'm available. I'm just throwing that out there. I'd love to come on again.
The dean can get it done.
Yeah, get it done, Dean. Get it done.
The dean can get it done. Well,
This was fun. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate this.
Appreciate it, Coach, also, and hopefully we can see you back here sometime soon, and everybody's safe to travel, and we miss you here.
Yep. Well, stay safe, everybody. God bless.
God bless.
Thank you, Coach Bill.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Coach.
Bye-bye.
For the attendees, so don't leave yet. So we're coming back in 30 minutes for Coach Will Voigt's session on his pill switch system. It's a very.
Tell Will I said hello. Tell Will I said hello.
All right, I'll tell Coach Will.
Okay. All right, guys.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Okay, so for those coaches that we randomly pick, so email me your address and we'll send the Blackwater gift packs to Mark Jason Mendoza, Ian Balite, Darlis Creencia, Clarence Arcangel, Mark Barrera, Rene Modelo, and Jason Mendoza. So I'll also find your email and get your address, and we will mail you the gift pack from Blackwater.
Congrats to the winners.
All right, so we still have one more for those late night sleepers. So in 30 minutes, so we can start a bit earlier, around 10:20. With Coach Will is almost ready. So
11:20.
11:20. Sorry, 11:20. So thanks again, and hope to see you on the other. Again, the links are at Hope Coaches Facebook page, or you can private message the page on Facebook or at Instagram. So you can get the links again. So thank you very much for the attendees. Again, the Dean and the Doc for a job well done. So there's one more. I hope you bear with me. And thank you so much again.